meeting to order, the Historic Commission for our June 5th meeting. Can I entertain a motion to...
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Adopted. Can I get approval of the minutes from our last meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve, second. May I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, so our first, what we're hearing tonight, Jefferson Street. Commissioners, as you know, they've been in, and have come before us before, and this is in a planning stage. And what we will go through tonight. So Rick Baldwin is with us this evening. Rick, you want to come on forward? And you guys, you want to come on forward with him? We can slide up another. We need one more chair. And Rick, what Rick is going to talk to us about is what's going on with 21 Jefferson Street, and he has given us some things. Rick, I'll give you the floor, and you can go ahead and address the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Commissioner, I do appreciate you taking the time out this evening to hear this. It's a little bit unusual. My name is Rick Baldwin, currently working as a consultant for the town of Brooklyn, just to assist in planning and zoning until permanent positions put in place. Imagine or understand that just the title, 21 Jefferson Street, next to the east property, very clear, a small triangle at the tip between Gay and Jefferson Street behind the hotel. And when I was brought on board, one of the actions that came up was to submit to the Board of Zoning Appeals a plan for 21 Jefferson, which you may have seen before. It's in your package. But that looked to be a bit of a challenge at that point in time because it didn't appear to be a strong enough consensus to make the path forward something that was easily executable, and the decision of what is really appropriate for the town. 1 year prior, the Board of Zoning Appeals had asked, please get to the Historic Commission, Planning Commission, get their some more inputs from them before coming back. So tonight is unusual. Again, I want to thank you for your time for an unusual format, since we're not asking for any vote for approval. We're just seeking to get input, or perhaps even an acknowledgement tonight that what you're going to see is something that you could support. We're only talking about a footprint of the building, which is not the usual purview for the Historic Commission. We're not talking about what it's going to look like as it comes up out of the ground, what the elevations will be, or what the materials will be. This fine group of people, we're very much hoping we'll be back to you in the short term for that. We have some success this evening and some success next week. I do apologize if it's confusing at the top that this says Historic and Planning Commission, but it is a package that will go to each rather than for a joint meeting this evening. So the main items that I wanted to talk about is up on the screen and in your handout package tonight. I didn't count the pages, excuse me. It's actually number 3 from the back. It's the shortest way to get there. It shows you a plan view of 21 Jefferson Street. It does show you a building layout, etc. But really what we're focusing on and trying to get in front of you this evening is how to make this work for everybody involved, both for the Hines as well as for the town, as well as for the historic district, and what the future of it looks like. And there's really some minor things, or some three items on here suggesting that I'd like you to take a look at. One of them is along the frontage of Jefferson Street. Currently, the sidewalk there today is 3.5 feet wide. But when you get up to the Jefferson Street side of the hotel, you have a 5 foot wide sidewalk. And with the exception of Mr. Oxford's building, in my opinion, without affecting the parking behind the hotel, the parking lot, in time, it's possible to have a 5 foot sidewalk that would extend from Main Street down to the tip of Jefferson, which I think would help draw the eye of people that are in downtown, that this is an extension of the business downtown area and the historic district. I'll jump ahead a little bit. One of the ideas that we've been talking about with town staff would be the idea of putting the Victorian decorative streetlight all the way out at the end, and in time, as we can get the rest of that sidewalk, et cetera, with street frontage done, extend the decorative streetlights down in that direction. I say that a little bit out of order. In terms of getting here, I do want to admit and be clear that the suggestions that are on this page come from me. That's where they initiated. I have shared them with the Hines and with Mr. Pfeiffer, who will be acting as their design agent as they move forward. Pfeiffer. Excuse me. Last week, had a meeting with the department heads from the town and went over what would be their issues and concerns, which don't so much go to what we're discussing tonight, but they've added to what's in this package. This package is a work in progress. If you read the whole thing, you're going to come to places in there where it's asking questions. Those are questions that, as we succeed with what the footprint of this site will be, then those questions can be worked on and answered, such as deliveries and where you're going to park cars and things of that sort. It's my understanding that at present they're still considering a one-story building with a possibility of a rooftop area, but in the long term that could become a 2- or 3-story building. And I think that as we talk about the footprint, that should be clearly in mind that it could go up to that height. Changes on here, as I said before, along Jefferson Street, moving out to a 5-foot wide sidewalk that's consistent with subpart A of current code 28-40, which calls for all rebuilt, replaced, or new sidewalks in town to be 5 feet wide. That would bring you up to the corner of Mr. Oxer's building without any obstruction. If you ask the question, gee, how are we going to get around Jeffrey Oxer's building in the future? The building was built in 1930. It would be a pinch point in that sidewalk where you would go from 5 feet down to 3.5. But that meets the absolute minimum ADA requirement in federal law. And under federal law, if you're in a historic district and you're rebuilding an area and you have to come to a pinch point, that is acceptable. So we would be able to remain compliant with federal law. The other change that's on here is not only that 5-foot wide sidewalk, but to ask on that side of the street that the face of building be 7 feet back from the face of curb. Face of curb versus back of curb is important because that's another 6 inches. That would be consistent with roughly the midpoint of the hotel along Jefferson Street, which is not parallel to Jefferson. It comes down to a point of almost 0. But when you get back by the kitchen, I believe it's almost as much as 14 feet back. You come to a midpoint when you have about 2 feet of green space. You can maintain landscaping in that area. I think it would be free. I would also think that even if it was additional sidewalk or concrete in that area, that would be acceptable. But it gives you that more open feeling. And if you do stand on the corner of Main Street and look down towards the tip of 21 Jefferson, you do have a clear sight line. So this would also begin to develop a much better sight line. And again, if we had that Victorian streetlights or streetlights down along there, that's going to draw the visitors to town down to that area because it would clearly signal to them that they're still in the historic district and there are businesses down there. On the Gay Street side, proposing to do exactly what they asked for. That is to move to 3.5 feet off the edge of pavement for the back edge of their building. Along Gay Street on that side, that is pretty much where they are set. I have to apologize, in one of these pictures in here, it's the back of Jeffrey Oxer's building. In my copy, there's a red circle around their survey stake, which you can spot in that picture. And that is 3.5 feet off the edge of the pavement, so it would be consistent along that side. The main point is, at the top, they had originally proposed to come 10 feet off of Jeffrey Oxford's building in the back. And marked on here, a suggestion to move that to 12 feet. At 10 feet, if you have 2 parking spaces there, you're 10 feet wide, you're about 65 feet long. The standard parking space for town of Berlin is to be 9 foot by 20, which, if you're 10 feet wide, you've not left a great deal of room for people to be able to walk through there. So looking to move that to 12 feet would provide a passageway through there for the long term. And people will decide how they're going to use that, but I would suspect that not many people want to walk all the way to the point and around. That 12 feet off, if the building goes up to 2 or 3 stories at some point in time in the future, it gives it a little bit area away, area separation from Mr. Oxford's building. However, that is not a requirement, but it would cover up his windows. There's one other red piece marked on there, and that's talking about a pole that's on Gay Street near the end of the property. In the notes that you're seeing, what that is to be determined. We don't know how much power the building is going to need, so we don't know what changes might be to the electrical service that's going to that building. But proposing that if there are changes there, currently at the end of Grace Street, which is the small side street that goes perpendicular to Jefferson, there is a Cobra Head street light on the pole there. And on this pole marked here, there's another Cobra headlight. Would look to make that a little less glaring. If we move to the decorative street lights, make sure that we have the appropriate lumens. And if that pole, if the fate of that pole is to not be there, then it gives us other options of what's going to happen with things like parking and delivery, which will come further, a little bit later this summer. I hope I haven't been too rambling, long-winded in that description. But that's the proposal is if this was to become a building footprint on that lot, which has many, many, many challenges if you try and do it perfectly per code. Building setback line on 2 frontages on a tapered, very narrow lot, and then a business district that's fronting a residential district makes it extremely challenging to put in a building that's going to bring economic activity to that portion of the business district, the downtown and historic district. And well, I guess personally, I'd like to see that change. I know on this side of the table, that's the case. And for many of the folks that I've been able to speak to about this, there seems to be a strong consensus to try and find the means to put a good economic activity on this parcel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Heinz, you guys, let you go, introduce yourselves again. We not know who you are as well, but for the record.
Sure. Brett Hines,
Megan Hines.
and
We're at 3280 Buttercup Court, if we're supposed to say that.
I'll just keep it short. Yeah, we're just looking to figure out how we can do this. So we have a vision of business and things we want to do, but there's all this technical stuff to figure out. So these 2 gentlemen know more of the details of how to articulate that, and they'll speak. Eric will speak on our behalf for the technicalities. But we're just looking for some direction in some areas we can do to make this work, because we want to we live here too. So.
May I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
The gentleman next to Rick, his position and name is?
Yeah.
Eric Pepper, architect, C Studio. I am also on the planning commission, and I live at 111 West Street.
Okay, well, thank you. Nice to meet you.
You got your name right.
Yeah, Eric, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'll later on, obviously, it's a tough lot development-wise, architecturally speaking, to develop, and then, a little bit the system of operations in the town of Berlin to navigate. We're very thankful to Rick for facilitating this conversation. We're open to obviously continued conversations. This property is actually right in my backyard, with Mr. Selway's building going to be in between it. But we're both very tied to the town from a business perspective, from having our families in town, and just wanting to do the right thing for business development on the lot and for the town. It's just such a unique piece of property that obviously a lot of thought went into including it into the historic district, and we want to do the right thing by that, and obviously make it a architectural piece of town. It is the terminus to that district there, and obviously the property itself and the shape is going to make it a unique building. Not that there are precedents for other buildings on acutely angled lots in town. But yeah, we'd like to work with all parties involved in overseeing to get to that point. And we're going to propose things that I know are going to be contentious, but we want to have as many conversations as we need to have about them.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming as well. Commissioners, we'll start with you guys. Does anybody, so basically, it's when Mr. Selway came to us, he brought us a rendering, and then we went back and forth to where we came to what was what we felt was a good building, a good compromise on a building.
Parts.
So, and I can't wait to see it, because I really am excited to see that building. And with this one, and so they're coming to us in a different way. This may be an original drawing right here. We can go from this, but they're looking for ideas to see, provided that they get the setback variances and approvals and everything. So they want to know, as the historic commission, what are we looking for in this building, so your architect can go from there. And the ideas, give them some ideas, and communicate back and forth. This is the only time that we can get together as a group to meet with them. Excuse me, we would have to meet individually if it comes to that. But as a group, that's how we wish to start this. So we start with
Carol had something to say.
Carol.
Well, I if you don't mind me starting, because years ago, and I don't know how many years now, when Habitat was interested in buying the property and this similar concept of a building, they called me. I was chair at the time, and I went down and looked, and I want something there. I love the idea that we could have some sort of a beautiful building there. The home that was taken down, I grew up with a family that lived there, and it really needed to be gone. I'm just really excited that you are now able to really get started on getting everything done. Everybody on this board, and probably half the town, knows that I've been on a mission for a long time to get Gay Street cleaned up. And I think having this and more sidewalks and we're getting to the vision really that Dave and Carolyn and I kind of started thinking about for that whole area when Habitat wanted to start with this type of project. So I'm happy to see you here. I will tell the board, I'm not sure if everybody was on the board in past years when we have done work with both of you, because we have done several things together. I'm confident that as we go forward and things get approved and so forth, these folks will do exactly what is approved. And if it comes to a point when if they're approved and they get to start building, and you know how it is with new construction, sometimes something that's approved, it just isn't gonna work. They're not gonna just go do something else. They will come to us and say, this isn't working. They will work with us. So you have my full support going forward. And needless to say, I'm probably gonna have some critiques on the building. But what you've talked about this evening about sidewalks and all that kind of thing, street lights, it's just what I would love to see. I really think we have this and Jonathan gets his building and we can really clean up as you're coming down off of Broad down there. That it's just going to be beautiful down there. A lot of flowers. Jeff Oxler and his wife have flowers out back. I mean, people really care that have the businesses there. So I think this is important. I think it will be an asset to town. I'm more than willing to work with both of you. So,
Ms. Rose, I would like to be clear that in what we've seen before and what we're looking at here, not proposing any sidewalk on the Gay Street portion of 21 Jefferson Street.
but you're bringing it down
On the Jefferson Street
on
side.
the Jefferson Street, yes, to me, that's the side that should have. I'm talking more about visual cleanup of things as you come down. It's getting a little bit better, but it still needs to be.
Thank you.
I have one question. On the back, that will be the Jefferson, no, the Gay Street side will be the back, correct? Will there be doors like
Will there be
to
a
come
back?
out?
The back will be between this building and Jeffrey Oxer's building. The intention is for it to have two fronts.
Okay, good, okay, I'll go ask you that. I see, okay,
Storefront.
all right.
And yeah, if I could just layer on one more thing, obviously, the real priority, and one of the design priorities has been focused on the continuance of a streetscape to some extent. You know, I don't think Rick mentioned, but the setbacks on this property are 10 feet on both Jefferson and Gay Street, which is obviously
Not gonna work.
ridiculous. Even 5 feet from a design perspective, which is what the Habitat building was approved for, is an awkward setback to have, because Jeffrey's building is, I think, less than a foot on one side from the sidewalk, and then that 3.5 feet on the other side too. So to restrict us from being set back in that view down Jefferson and Gay to be tucked in behind that building. Again, for the streetscape, if we're talking about elements like having the street lamp on that point, yeah, you can't see the terminus building, you know, behind that. So that's been a priority, and that's, from a footprint standpoint, what we really need to get support for to design the building.
Well, I'm gonna let
It's
some of
tricky
you
and
gentlemen that knew more about that than me.
But I guess my question, so if we're starting to look at a building, if we're looking at this is just a starting point?
Just a rough.
I can't answer that. What I'm proposing is that we're talking about what is the constructible footprint. These folks would have to talk to you about what's going to come up from that.
Right.
Well, I
At
think we
this time.
need to know that, a little of that to be able to.
Do you want some of our thoughts? Is that what I was hearing?
I'm
I mean,
trying to say,
beginning where
like,
we're all starting out together, explaining, and this has been very productive for me, Rick, thank you. I mean, getting it more, because I'm looking at the challenges you all have on this triangle piece of property, huge. It almost seems like what the building's gonna look like almost seems to be, we'll be like, oh, wow, now we're at the final stage, we can get going on this, because it's such a challenge. So I'm not quite sure, what do you want from us this evening in particular, or something? I have some thoughts when I first looked at this. And I don't know if we're ready for that, or if that would be later on.
I think that's what they're looking for. If you'd like to see an awning on this building.
Well, let me tell you what my thought was when I looked at our
Yeah, go
camera.
for
When
it.
I
That's-
first
that's what
looked
we're
at
doing
it,
here.
I don't know, Carolyn might remember, a few of you know what a Trailways bus station did look like in the old days. It was small with that, but it was welcoming to people who were coming to town. I mean, this is, you're coming, when I moved here, it was in Salisbury back in the day.
Yes,
And it
exactly.
doesn't unlike it, but then I thought, oh, really, people in Berlin, they went by train. And most of you may have seen some of the books or pictures of the train station was here with the firehouse. Am I right on that, John, that was there? Charming, almost made me feel of this kind of stature where you're at this point, 1.5 stories or wherever it's going to go to. Not that it looked like a Disneyland at all, train station, not at all. I can almost see taking a concept like that and putting a lot of glass in there and making it give that modern vibe that the town is going forward as well as living with our wonderful historic past. So those are just quick thoughts when I first looked at your rendering and looked at this. I thought, no, I could see that, and let's get up and up and give it a look. And I don't know how anyone else, that was just my first thought. It could be with a little architectural detail or lots of glass or something to make it inviting, and oh, this is a gathering place, not just all walled in. Sometimes I think people go by a building and they don't even know it's there because the name's so trendy or cute. You think, oh, hair cutter, yeah, I got that, but hair garage or different things that people don't know. So I was thinking something that people could see and visualize. And I always think it's so nice in the hotel at night, Laura, when I come down Broad Street, when you can see the activity in there in the evening. It would make you want to go into, rather than it's something's like, well, I wonder if I want to go in there, who's in there, whatever. It's just some random, very more thoughts for this. Yeah. Okay. Norty, Laura, Don?
No, go ahead, Brian.
No?
I mean, I agree with you with the footprint and everything. I think it's hard for, I mean, we don't know what this building's really gonna look like. You said that it could be 2 stories, 3 stories. By the time it gets to us, it could be vastly different than this drawing, right? Or is it
Not to that scale.
Not to that
This,
scale.
we are moving forward with the 1-story
All right.
building with a roof deck. It's-
Are you looking for advice right now, or you just want to get approval on the footprint? Because I think the footprint is, like the way you described it, is, and the way it fits is good with me.
Yeah. What was the rendering part of the back?
It was put in, yeah, because that was submitted.
Not,
But even-
it wasn't the intention for that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
part of this
I get it.
packet. It was
Yeah,
supposed
I think it would be difficult to give Eric advice on the design of the building when he doesn't know how big the space he's working with.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah.
the problem we're trying
So-
to solve.
So like, I mean, if you were asking me to design something and didn't have a spec on a size to design it in, I would have difficulty figuring out where the pieces go. And as far as, it still has to be functional for Megan and Brett, too, for what their use is. And until that's kind of fleshed out, I don't know if we can give you much advice design-wise, what would pass, what wouldn't pass.
And that's consistent with, why we're so appreciative of you taking the time to listen to this evening. It's not showing you the building, it's not showing you materials, it's not showing what it's going to look like. It really is just the footprint. Where the Board of Appeals had asked to make sure that this commission's and planning commission's input along those lines was part of getting to the point of what is the footprint that can be built. The one thing that love any input on, imagine, but what we're seeking is just an idea that this footprint is something that the Historic Commission can support, but it will come back to you in its usual and traditional manner as designed and stuff.
I have a question about when would they put in the 5-foot wide sidewalk? Would it be?
That would have to be at construction. They wouldn't get their occupancy permit until that's done.
It's like
So that's a requirement of if they go through and build that is one.
That's usual and customary in this jurisdiction and in others.
But the town would be the ones that would put in the streetlights.
And the sidewalk, the town would be doing the sidewalk.
Yeah, he said they
But
are.
what about the sidewalk that would be, like, would, I think it's, you know, when you're on Main Street and you could look down, I think your vision is awesome with the old, the historic looking streetlights and the sidewalk. The thing that I just find personally upsetting is how many parking places the Atlantic Hotel would lose in that.
I don't believe they would lose any. I've looked at
But that little,
the cottage building.
yes, but that's part of the Atlantic Hotel, that cottage.
Yes, so if, well, this is not on this evening's agenda, I'll just say it quickly. The two parking spaces at the cottage that are immediately next to Jeffrey Oxford's building, the first one is not legal. If we wanted to just say, get rid of it, that would have to happen tomorrow. It's not 9 foot by 20. So when you have a vehicle parking there, it's sticking out into Jefferson Street, which is not desirable. The next one over is marginally okay. But if you go to the other side where they begin to have the angled in parking going up that side, there's enough space to put 2 more parking spaces there if you change how the circulation works. So you would be able to get, I believe you'd be able to get a 5-foot sidewalk with ADA required islands of refuge as per federal law across that parking lot for the hotel without losing any parking spaces and getting rid of that one that is undersized and not compliant.
And then on the other Gay Street side, would there be any loss of spaces?
There
And
wouldn't
this
be-
is just my curiosity, it has nothing to do with this.
So,
Isn't it
What's
parking on
happening?
Gay Street then?
No, I mean, we have our dumpster over there.
And it's sidewalk.
the side- If there's, is there gonna be a sidewalk going around down the Gay Street side also?
He said no.
Oh, okay.
He
because
said
you really don't have the place for it. What appears to be a sidewalk today in front of Pop's Kitchen
Right.
is not really a sidewalk. That's actually street with a little bit of extra relief on the edge. It's not a legal sidewalk. But we don't have any more real estate. We can't, there's no way to,
Nowhere to put it.
no way to make Gay Street wider. So if, in this package, you'll see that there are still challenges to be dealt with for Gay Street or for this
Yeah.
property, so, you know, deliveries, parking, but
Emergency services, vehicles.
Yeah.
yeah, and that's another,
That's a whole
I told you that
thing.
red circle didn't show up for the property marker, but there's a couple of photographs in there where you see delivery trucks on Gay Street. There's one that shows a, is there one, there's one prior to that. too. Yeah, that one, the bottom picture there. You see a delivery truck on one side, and then further down, you see an SUV parked on what we'll call the sidewalk. Well, when you have that kind of configuration, and you have to get an emergency vehicle through there, pedestrians, kids on bicycles, you have a situation that's not very desirable, and not easy to manage or change. There's another picture of a delivery truck on Gay Street. That one at the top, and I'll go back and make sure it's in the package for the next time, because I had a red line between that bollard, that yellow bollard on the left-hand side, and the bumper of that truck. I'm out there with a tape measure, and he was closing up, but he was very accommodating. He held the tape measure on the bumper of his truck, and there's 12 feet between that truck, as that's sitting, it's not on the sidewalk, between the bumper of that truck and that bollard, there's 12 feet. You can get an ambulance or a fire truck through there. But on one side, you know, when somebody wants to do something on the other side, it's a little bit difficult. So this is a discussion with, you know, with the town department heads. They recognize it as well. There are things that can be done. You can speak to the chief, and it doesn't matter how many no parking signs you put up. It's a challenge, but that's
Yeah,
not,
Bob's put one
that's
out.
not so
And
much for them to solve as
I
it
didn't
is.
mean to get, you know, my own curiosity for the sidewalks got me on a little bit of a off topic. But I just wanted to say that when we worked with the other building across the street, it started off very, very, very contemporary, and it ended still contemporary building, but it took a while, but we all compromised, and I do think that that building is going to be beautiful, and I'd like to see the same thing happen here. The one thing I can say is that I see brick, and I think that's a great starting place. just to see the brick there that you see all through town, and it'll complement the new building that's gonna be across the street. And I just think this will be something moving forward that we will all work together. Honestly, I'll be glad to see the lot go, because I feel like it looks a little, like it needs a little love. I think over the last couple of years, it's gotten kind of dilapidated, and I'll be glad to see something new and fresh. And we are the Historic Commission, but as Mary Moore said, we're not against something, especially in the Arts District. We're excited to see something fresh and new, but still have some kind of reflection of the town. So I would say, we'll need some detail. And I don't feel that I can comment on the size of the building or the setbacks, because I don't know enough about it to make a comment. So that's all.
Well, I said the gentlemen need to make and if our gentlemen feel that the proposal will work, that's fine, that's all I need. I don't want to make a vote on something I really don't understand very much about,
So-
but I know these
We're not
gentlemen
gonna
do.
So
I
for-
think part of the purpose, and please correct me if I'm making incorrect assumptions here, I think part of the purpose for them to come to you tonight was to make sure there was nothing that you were seeing here that you were gonna go, oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, okay, well,
So I
nothing.
think you're good there.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as the footprint and everything, so basically, what is it ultimately you will be asking for?
Could you repeat the question?
What, as far as the footprint and the variances on it, what are you gonna be asked for, a 5-foot setback? Are they gonna be for a 5-foot setback around, or are you gonna be wanting to go right to the street?
Well, again, what's been put down on here as a conversation starter comes from me as an opinion and going out there and spending quite a bit of time taking a look. Along Jefferson Street, it would be asking to set the building at 7 feet from the face of curb, 3.5 feet from the edge of pavement on Gay Street. Let the sidewalk be 5 feet. Now, whether that remaining 2 feet between the building is landscaped or hard surface, that would come in design, and it's also subject to be pushed back. Again, I want to be very clear. I wanted to put something forward that I thought created the appropriate balance and compromise that would give them a footprint that releases them to be able to go forward and design that could succeed. But, I have opinions at home, they get changed all the time.
Yeah, don't they all?
The awning overhangs that 7 feet, right?
Well, how it's drawn, and those are Rick's suggestions, are consistent on the Gay Street side. The 3.5-foot setback is how we have it drawn currently. On the Jefferson Street side, as we have it drawn, if we're looking at this view, the brick wall is actually set back 5 feet from the back of curb, as opposed to the face of curb, so 9 feet from the face of curb. But we have a more solid roof rather than an awning, because it is our intention to collect rainwater off that roof, so it would actually be a built roof rather than an awning. So somewhat reminiscent in detailing of the awnings that exist in downtown, but those obviously shed water directly onto the street and would potentially shed water directly onto the sidewalk. And stormwater is a big topic in town right now, and this lot is not required to deal with stormwater the same way other lots are because of the size, but we would like to deal with all the stormwater, both with the vegetated roots and the rainwater collection. I know those are some things that I'm open to hear comments about tonight, but they would be kind of creative architectural
Well,
elements that do that.
Jeff Officer's building is right where it is, because it was built before I was born, so it's old. And I never, in my mind, walking down, thought, gosh, this building's over too far. I mean, I don't have a problem with it being
I have a
on the
different-
Gay Street side.
Carolyn said.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just, real quick question. How many designated parking places did they say you had to have?
According to code, the answer is 0.
You don't have to have any.
The
Put it on.
code-
Wow.
The way the code is written, it talks about so many parking spaces per square foot of building,
Right.
and it never answers what that ratio is. So there is nothing in code that sets a hard requirement for this until the code is corrected.
Okay, but I know in our situation with our building, they enforced that we had to get more property.
Would that be different if there was residential space above this?
No,
No?
Okay, that's
this has
interesting.
been through the attorneys as well because it is a gap in the code.
You know, it's the
Because
short
we had to
of
lease
one.
land from the railroad in order, because of our square footage, to have at 116 Broad Street across to the new beer brewery that's going in there, that they wouldn't let us open until we had to get all this, and that's why I was curious. I thought, gosh, where in the world could you even, maybe get the chef and a few people if they have their cars, owner spaces, but, it'd just be like public parking in town. People, there really wouldn't be any guest, for lack of guest parking or.
There's no tool available to us to make, to.
Well, I was going to say, I kept thinking, I've put my glasses on, thinking maybe I'm missing, there's an area that I saw. Well, that's very fortuitous on that part, because that's certainly,
We went through some conversations with the planning commission. I believe we've been in front of them previously without, Rick's
Rick did your job
interpretation
for
of the
you.
code.
Right.
But we, obviously parking has been
Mhm.
a contentious issue that the public has brought up as well.
That's an improper space for the yes.
And it's another, aspect of the design. Obviously, the commons as is designed is intended to be a space where people ride their bike to and walk to. That's part of the brand of Brett and Megan's businesses, and we intended to be the brand that we advocate for, with this building, providing, bike storage, providing, covered bike racks, spot, put your baby stroller under an overhang, things like that.
I just don't even see where you wouldn't have parking anyway.
We showed some
Commercial
diagrams,
and
we showed some
Yeah.
diagrams with like parallel parking. The Habitat building had parking at the tip, and then some parallel parking, which it just,
There's nothing that I'm saying tonight that precludes that. It's not part of what's looking for consensus about. But it also looking at what can be enforced. There is nothing that can be enforced to require it.
I just look back at the Selway building and where we started with that, and we were able to compromise, and I think it was quite an accomplishment. And this is a really neat piece of property, I think, and it's got a lot of potential, so I'm really excited to see what you guys can come up with. And it just, I'm being silly, but I like old buildings, and I said, here's Berlin's chance to get our miniature version of the Flatiron building, just because of the way the property's shaped. But I like Laura's idea of some brick. I think, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
I think we're all very anxious to work with you and see the, when it gets all ready to come to us to look at. I'm excited about it. I know we all are.
Yeah, I think our sense is that the footprint,
Just fine.
I think we're good there. The only one concern that I see or that I have is vegetation, permanent vegetation growing on the roof. I don't know, that could potentially look like weeds growing on the roof and whatnot. But just, I don't know.
The Selway building has a living roof on it.
Yeah, and it's taken
3
care
stories.
of, they're gonna have to think about.
What would be up there?
I don't know yet.
I don't know.
I was gonna say.
No, I can
different.
answer it. It's very low maintenance, native species.
So it wouldn't be, but I'm saying, would it be like bar up there?
Plants up there, or what?
Like a bar,
what
is
we
it
use?
for a bar? Like, is it gonna be, or is it just plants and?
Oh, it's gonna be an open space that people can walk up to, but we're not gonna do any serve, there's not gonna be like a wet bar or anything up there, like nothing
But it's
formal. Yeah, like bench, you know, like wrap around that.
like a garden more than.
Yeah,
I
you
think
can
Robbins has that, if I'm not mistaken.
Not
Along
anymore.
with, they have London.
They had it up there, and I think they took it down.
Did they take it
But
down?
it'll be a green space.
The,
You need
the,
to, yeah, I like it.
yeah, I'm not sure how to reference the pages,
It's
but
kind of several, lower
Layers.
terrace of vegetated roof and kind of perimeter planter box, help with, sound coming off that roof is just another layer. And then obviously the stormwater management is filtering that. But really up there, it's not fully designed yet. It's one of those spaces that's contingent on the footprint of the building.
Well, I think they have their, I think you have your consensus, right?
Yeah.
Is everybody?
Consensus to the changes as recommended by staff. Thank you.
Yeah.
For clarity.
Do you wish for?
Do we need a motion on that?
anything to send to the
I
plant.
think
to-
consensus is adequate in this.
Next week, be similar discussion with planning commission with regard to footprint. Ultimately, the goal is to get to the point where Board of Appeals, Planning Commission, and Historic Commission are saying, we're good with this footprint. I'd like to see that happen, right after next week's meeting. And what I don't know is, and we'll talk with Joe more about that, will that be a variance or will it be an ordinance? And that's the administrative process for the town. I'm going to let somebody smarter than me determine that.
Do you want a letter from the chair to planning
I
and
think
zoning?
what I would envision is, let's say it needs to go to an ordinance. Let's say it's mayor and council that are the only ones that make this change. What I would envision desirable would be a letter of consensus signed by the chair of each Board of Appeals, Planning Commission, and Historic Commission.
But I mean, when they go to planning commission next week, would you want something official that we all were?
That would be wonderful.
That's what I'm asking.
Well, I think-
Or the chair
Well,
again.
My point of view is, I don't know. Like,
I think because of
to
the,
approve something, like, I don't know.
Okay.
So I'm not saying I approve, I'm not saying I don't approve, I'm saying
you don't
this is
approve,
not
but
my.
I agree.
Well, what we're approving, what
It's a
we're-
variance is on each side and side.
I think I would just go with whatever the planning and zoning, because they know. But I don't know the first thing about variances or why the setbacks are what they are.
That's a different question. Would you have an objection to it?
No,
I
I
think
mean,
that's
That's
like
not our
a-
bailiwick, really.
That's
We
what I
don't
said,
have all the
whatever
aesthetics.
meant were in favor of them doing anything.
I think that because of the timing, you can, the planning commission can certainly be referenced back to this meeting, which is recorded and available for them to view. And the fact that the minutes will reflect that the consensus was that you're good with it. I think that would be sufficient at this point.
From a visual standpoint.
Yes,
I'm on board.
yeah.
From a functional standpoint, that's planning. That's, but from a visual standpoint, I think we're all.
Aesthetics.
I'll mention, in February, we did attend the planning meeting, and they overall gave their consensus then.
That was what we
That
went
included that
to.
discussion of setbacks.
I watched that, yeah, you did.
Yeah, I'm not against it, I'm not for, I'm just.
There was a lot that will come into light, we will execute, three-dimensional views similar to the ones Johnson executed on the project. That will give, down the line, that'll give you a better idea of what we're talking about in terms of the continuation of the streetscape and, the importance of projecting the building as far as the adjacent building, Jeffrey Officer's building, projects out, from kind of both Jefferson and Gay Street views. So I understand that's kind of mostly what we're talking about, like, as a principle of a historic district, a relatively consistent streetscape as you walk down the sidewalk. Obviously, this building will be different, but it won't be set back 10 feet, it'll be
I see.
projecting the same distances.
I see.
Jeff's building. Yeah.
Now,
So
I'm-
visually,
I'm
it's
more
more
like
like
Strictly
the other
conceptually,
buildings.
Exactly.
visually from that perspective, yeah.
I think it should be, to look right.
I like the flat iron idea too, because that gives a real contemporary twist to Berlin and keeping with the aesthetics, get down to some brick or glass or something, it gives it still a vibe that, you know, in Disneyland in Salisbury, it's Berlin. There's a challenge for your architect.
And
You know,
I'll add just briefly, and the code will allow us to build taller than what we think we can afford right now. And so that's why we're doing it in stages, because this is a long game, and we're trying to just, get the function utility of our business so we can move in downstairs, make it work, and then as we see what we need upstairs, maybe it's something for the business, maybe it's more residential. We have 2 EDUs on the lot already, so we have, that in place if we have residential or something. But that's just kind of why we're doing it in these stages and trying to do it as tasteful and practical as we can.
Well said.
Yeah, thank you
All
all
right, so
for.
yeah, so we're with that. Barry, you said they can resort back to this, so we don't need to make a motion or anything.
I don't think so. I think the minutes will reflect it, but for a matter of just timing, because Carol's got to get the packet out to the planning commission. It's
Well, you
public
said at the
record, it's
beginning, this
available.
was
to anyone
anything
to see
you
the
wanted to say,
consensus.
when you just wanted us to give our, blessing.
Get it off the ground.
Yeah, we just need to make sure we're in the right direction.
And Rick did refresh my, him and I spoke yesterday, but he refreshed my memory that when they tore that house down on that property, it was the oldest house in Berlin, right?
That's what your investor told me.
She did.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I'm
Older
older
than
than as well.
newbies? Older than,
The Tosco house down there?
They're up back here on Pitt Street. The older than
I thought
that.
it was-
that was Mr. Pitts' father built that
I
around.
believe so.
Because my grandfather bought his land next door to them for Mr. Pitts' father. Well, I don't know, it was.
Have to look it up. Have to look it up.
I can't. I said no.
Okay, well, that's it. Do you have any more questions from us or anything, or do you guys?
Thank you for your time and consideration.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks.
Good luck, we'll see you again.
Sounds great.
In the near future.
Yes. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks for coming, thank you. All right, public comments, any comments from the public? No? Staff, anything? Everything going good over there? Everything going good over there?
Three beautiful ladies sitting over there tonight helping us, thank you.
Commissioners, do you have anything that you want to bring up or anything?
Who will be filling Dave's position?
The gentleman right, that was here.
He's filling in right now.
He's not filling in as planning director, to be clear. He is here to facilitate these processes.
Correct.
And make sure the projects keep moving. We have received a number of applications and we're diving into reviewing those.
Big position to fill, sure.
Believe me, no one's more anxious than I.
I can imagine. Right. Just a little more style, right?
Okay, and I do have something to bring up. At the end of our last meeting, it was brought up about the building with the white window, and then there was a door that was being replaced.
We took a good hard one look, as I recall, sit on the corner, we'll just a
So-
good
so
hard
at-
one look at the,
As it happened, when the door was being replaced, Carolyn had gone over for a stop work order on them. They have now returned, they were out of the country. They've returned, they're back, and they were in to see Carolyn. Carolyn, just let you explain what Deborah said to you. What she asked.
Yes, well, yesterday, she came in and she said she was just gonna leave the door and paint it, but today she called. She's gonna come to Historic next month,
Okay.
because the door is rotten.
Okay.
yes.
So she's
Obviously,
gonna
yeah.
come in and do her paperwork so she can come before you next month.
Okay.
July 3rd meeting.
She had originally asked to paint the door, leave the door, paint the door green.
Yes.
As, just repaint it, well, actually, wait a minute, paint. Anyway, she wanted to paint it green to match all the rest of the doors, the windows in the area. I also said, Carolyn, ask her about the window, we talked about the window.
Was that a
She
primer?
will come to us at the next meeting, we will
Okay.
talk about the window as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. All right, anything else?
Thank you, Nordy, for
Yeah.
going to that.
Well, and Carolyn,
Well,
plus
Jake-
we rode
Jake
by,
had
it's all
painted the
working.
window.
I called Carolyn, I'm riding behind her, taking the door out, I'm having a heart attack, good morning, you called.
Yeah, I rode by, so I'll say thank you.
Because I remember it was in disrepair. I think there's a window or something going towards the second floor up there. It was, yeah, needed some attention. Housekeeping, we'll call it. It's housekeeping, yeah.
Yeah, so they will be at our next meeting and we'll be able to
Okay.
talk with them about that. I don't have anything else to bring up. Anybody else, anything? Motion for adjournment? So, meeting adjourned?